How you guys doing? Joe Monroe here, Lycan Jiu Jitsu, and we are back. Continue on with my journey to black belt. Keep in mind that I am just, um, I'm not going into super detail in everything out of respect to past teachers and comrades that I've trained with. You know, I don't want to get to the nitty gritty, so I'm just giving a good overview. So I think we talked about how I moved on to the team in Pleasanton, and that was good. And so I spent a good amount of time. I would say about 2 years there. Darcy Alero was heavy on self-defense, heavy on competition. Um, at that time in that gym, we also had, not only was it the Darcy Alero gym and we had the mats and everything, but we also coexisted with a boxing team as well, boxing fit. And so that was used. You had a ring, you go in there, you could lift weights, you could work out, and you can also take boxing lessons and Muay Thai lessons. I did some boxing lessons, but I really stuck with the Muay Thai, and I was doing the Muay Thai and the Jiu Jitsu together for around 2 years. So with that, it was good. I mean, we had not only was it a big team, you know, we would go in there and usually always at least 20 people on the mat, not including myself, 10 to 15 people minimum, you know, and then the black belt, he was always there. And if he wasn't there, his second in command was there. He's really good. His name is Scott. Shout out to Scott. He's a really good teacher. He really understands the system. Also Tony, Zach, Kane, all you guys, man. You guys were, those guys really pushed me to the limit. You know, so like I said, we did a lot of heavy training. Some days, you know, some MMA fighters would come through. We had one UFC fighter that was also a Darcy Alero black belt, by the way. They called him Tatanada. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, but he was really good. You may have seen him in one of those UFC fight cards. His debut, he heel hooked the guy. I mean, he blasted his ankle. It was pretty good. So we trained with him from time to time and other up-and-coming MMA fighters. So we did the gi, no gi, self-defense. Like I said, with the testing ourselves in the belt test, you helping out your teammates. And that's where, in that team, where our competition, I did a lot of competitions. I mean, I was competing anytime the team was competing, and it felt good. You know, we would get out there and we were fighting hard, and I had some wins. Matter of fact, all my wins were with that team, you know, and they really have it down packed. And I wouldn't even say that they just did a competition training team. It was just built into the system of, you know, your cardio was always tested. And sometimes we may get a little bit more tense, but it was always tested, you know, because if you're rolling for 30 minutes guaranteed each class, and a 30-minute workout guaranteed, and some days you're doing judo and takedowns and among other things, it was always something. Now, I did mention that as I was going along, you know, having to jump to one of the teams that I was going to as well, you know, so I was training at Darcy, it was full time, but in that previous time where we were looking for gyms and everything, and I was going around, I remember I went with Isaiah, and we met a guy by the name of Adam Lowry. And so Adam Lowry was who he eventually became elite team. But back then, he was what was it? He was it wasn't elite team. It was man, I'm forgetting the name. I'll remember it later. But I remember him. He was a blue belt, and you know, good guy and his wife, and they were just trying to use this up and coming. And for whatever reason, he wasn't a part of a of his own team. He was trying to do his own thing as a blue belt. So, you know, we would train and we would train together. And I continued that on, off and on. So no matter where I went, I would usually go to Adams whenever he needed me. Whenever he wanted to train, I would go and train with him as well. Okay, so yeah, I remember Big Show's first day. Yeah, I just remember all that stuff where he was in El Cerrito, I want to say El Cerrito Plaza over there by Lucky's, and so it was a very nice place before he got to his final place. We'll touch on that later, but I met Adam back in 2011, so little did I know that eventually him and the elite team would be the guys that I got my black belt from. So, you know, you just never know who you're going to meet on your journey. But back to Darcy O'Leary's, I mean, the training was good, but let me run you down the stress of, eventually, I started working in San Francisco as well. So my whole jiu-jitsu time, I always had to, I was always working. I always, you know, I had a kid, you know, and then I think by that time I had 2 kids and all that personal stuff that was going on. So driving to Pleasanton, so I would wake up, drive all the way to San Francisco, from San Francisco, drive all the way to Pleasanton to train, and then come home. And a lot of times I was getting home at like 9, 10 o'clock, you know, 10 o'clock or 11, and then sometimes turning around and having to get back to work. And so it was a big stress. So I spent a lot of time on the road. And it got to the point to where me going to Darcy O'Leary's, it was so tough because I had like 2 cars break down. Shouts out to the head coach, Blackbelt. He was really helpful. He coordinated some folks where they would pick me up from Bart. Jedi, Zach, appreciate you, man. So he would pick me up, and you know, he would take me to class. You know, and Jedi was we called him Jedi. But his name was Jedediah. But he was a blue belt, but he wrestled. College wrestler, and so he really showed me the difference between grappling with someone who didn't know wrestling and someone who did. So if you're out there and you're training, you're doing wrestling, or you should get some wrestling in. It'll really help you out a lot, okay? But anyway, I had car 2 break down, and it just got to the point to where I'm going to San Francisco, catching BART, and then I'm catching BART all the way to Pleasanton, and then I'm getting off at Pleasanton, and then Jedediah's picking me up. I'm training. I'm doing 2 or 3 classes because I would do the Muay Thai, then I would do the Jiu-Jitsu, and then by that time, you know, I'm trying to get back home, and I'm getting back home 11:30 at night, 12, and then turn around going to work, and I was doing that 3 or 4 times a week. So it got to be tough. And then the gym moved to Livermore, and that made it tougher for me at that time because I lived in Richmond, and so that BART ride, I want to say it's about an hour from San Francisco to Pleasanton, at least, you know, and even the drive was even longer. You know, I would get off work at 5 p.m., and I wouldn't even get there sometimes till 6:30, you know, so an hour and 30 minutes driving, and, you know, it got to be tough. So I had to make some decisions for me and my fiance at the time, and I think we had getting ready to buy a house, or we were looking, but it was tough, or maybe we were just dating in the beginning. But either way, it got really tough to where I wasn't going to be able to sustain training out there as much as I would like, and the demand of the team was you needed to be there as much as possible. So I had to make a decision for me and my family, and so, you know, I spoke with Darrelson and everything, and we talked about it, and, you know, it might have been some mix-up there, may have been some miscommunication, but nevertheless, I decided that I needed to, for myself and my family, it was best for me to find somewhere closer, and so that's what I did. I called Kyle up, my old 6'10" buddies, went by, trained with them a little bit, and then I just, you know, after talking with him, we had a long discussion because we had some things that we had to work out amongst ourselves during that time where the gym had closed and everything. We had some tough times with me and him, but we worked it out. We talked out like men, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna be able to do this, and then I'll be able to hopefully go back to dark shows when I got a chance. But you know, everything happens for a reason, and you know, everything works out. You know, there's some discussions that was had with my former team at the time that I won't share, but yeah, you know, jiu-jitsu is tough, man. It can make you, uh, you meet good people, and you train together, you bleed together, but then sometimes stuff can happen to where, you know, if you're just there and you wanting to train and you're just trying to be the best you, sometimes your decisions that you make may not make people happy. So I'll leave it at that, okay? And we'll stop it there, and we'll get back to it next week.